Have you ever stood still in the middle of a crowded street and felt like the entire world was moving without you? Have you ever felt like the ground beneath your feet suddenly disappeared? I have. There was a moment in my life when I lost everything I thought defined me: my career, my home, and my sense of direction. It felt like a terrifying ending, but looking back now, I realize it wasn't an ending at all. It was a quiet, difficult, and necessary beginning. Today I want to tell you the story of how I rebuilt my life from scratch, one small word and one small step at a time. Chapter 1. The Sudden Storm. Let's go back to a Tuesday morning in November. It was a biting, cold morning, the kind of cold that goes through your coat and touches your skin. I remember walking out of the glass doors of the office building where I had spent the last 5 years of my life. In my hands, I held a small cardboard box. Inside were a coffee mug, a stapler, and a picture frame. That was it. That was 5 years of work. My hands were trembling. Do you know this word, trembling? It means shaking slightly, usually because you are cold, afraid, or very emotional. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. My thoughts were scattered. Scattered means they were not organized. They were messy, flying around in my head like leaves in the wind. I couldn't focus on just one thing. I had just lost my job. There was no warning, no meeting to prepare me. The company simply closed its doors. Just like that, my routine, my salary, and my identity were gone. I stood in the sidewalk and I had no plan. I had no clear direction. Direction here means a path or a goal to follow. I felt like a ship in the ocean without a compass. The street was packed with people. Men in suits, women with strollers, students with backpacks. Everyone seemed to be rushing somewhere important. But I felt completely isolated. Isolated, this is a strong word. It means feeling separated from others, feeling totally alone even if people are standing right next to you. I walked to a bus stop and sat on a wooden bench. The wood was freezing. Cars rushed past me. Whoosh, whoosh. It seemed like every person driving those cars had a purpose. They had a destination. I felt deeply confused. I was unable to make even a simple decision, like whether to go home or stay there. And if I am being honest, I was scared. I sat there, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. In, out. I tried to focus on the present moment. I whispered to myself, "This is not the end." Saying that made me feel slightly calmer. Slightly means a little bit, just a tiny amount. But sometimes a tiny amount of hope is all you need. Chapter 2. The Stranger's Wisdom. As I sat there, staring at my shoes, an old woman sat down on the other end of the bench. She had silver hair and a bright red scarf. She didn't say anything at first. She just watched the cars. Then she turned and looked at me. Her smile was warm and reassuring. Reassuring is a beautiful word. It describes something that removes your doubts and fears. It makes you feel safe again. Her smile told me that things were going to be okay. She asked softly, "Are you all right, young man?" I didn't mean to, but I told her everything. I told a stranger that I had lost my job and didn't know what to do. She listened. She didn't interrupt. She just nodded slowly. Nodded means moving your head up and down to show you understand or agree. When I finished, she said, "My dear, I once lost everything too. My house, my job, my money. It felt like a disaster." She moved a little closer and continued, "But that loss became an opportunity. An opportunity is a chance to do something new or better. Losing everything gave me the chance to rebuild my life the way I actually wanted it." She told me she used to work in a factory, but after she lost that job, she decided to learn how to bake. It was hard. She cried many nights, but eventually she opened a small bakery. She told me it was difficult, but it was worth the effort. Worth the effort. This phrase means that the hard work you do brings a good result. The prize at the end is bigger than the pain of the work. Her words encouraged me. They gave me confidence. I realized that if this old woman could survive and thrive, maybe I could too. Chapter 3. The Commitment. That evening, I sat at my small kitchen table. The apartment was quiet. I opened a fresh blank notebook. I picked up a pen. I decided to make a personal commitment. A commitment is a serious promise. It is a promise you make to yourself or others that you will not break. I wrote down these words. I will not surrender. I will not give up. I realized I needed a system. I remembered reading about a concept similar to the power of small habits. The idea is that you don't need to change everything in one day. You just need to do small things consistently. So I made a rule. Every week I would attempt one new experience. Attempt means to try. I would try something I had never done before. New experiences help us grow. They stretch our minds. I looked around my small apartment. It wasn't a palace, but it was warm. I had food in the fridge. I felt grateful. Grateful means thankful. I focused on what I had, not what I had lost. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Chapter 4. Stepping into the Unknown. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sky was a pale blue and the air was cool and crisp. I made a cup of tea and sat by the window. I wanted to start my plan immediately. Immediately means right now, without waiting. My first goal was simple. Go to the park and read a book for 30 minutes. Now, this might sound easy to you, but when you are depressed or anxious, leaving the house can feel like climbing a mountain. Reading a book in public felt unfamiliar. Unfamiliar means it is not something you know well. It feels strange. I opened my book. At first, it was hard to concentrate. My mind wanted to worry about money, about jobs, about the future, but I forced myself to read the words. As I sat there, I began to notice things. To notice means to see or hear something and become aware of it. I noticed the birds singing high in the branches. I noticed a woman walking a golden retriever. I noticed children laughing on the swings. I noticed the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves. I realized I had been so busy with my career for 5 years that I had stopped noticing the world. I felt curious again. Curious means wanting to learn more, wanting to understand. When I walked home, I felt proud. It was a small task, but I had done it. A task is a small job or activity. I wrote in my notebook, Task 1, completed. Chapter 5. A new connection. The following week, I wanted to try something harder. I decided to visit an animal shelter. An animal shelter is a safe place for animals that have no home. They are often lost or abandoned. I wanted to do something useful. I wanted to be helpful. When I arrived at the shelter, the smell of cleaning supplies and dog food filled the air. A woman named Anna welcomed me. She was a volunteer. A volunteer is someone who works for free because they want to help. Anna explained how the shelter worked. She asked if I wanted to help feed the dogs. I felt hesitant. Hesitant. This means I was unsure. I paused before acting because I was a little nervous. I hadn't spent much time with dogs before. I was afraid I might do something wrong. But then I met Leo. Leo was a small brown dog with big, sad eyes. He sat very still. Anna told me he had been abandoned. To be abandoned means to be left alone without care. His owners had moved away and left him behind. I sat on the concrete floor next to his cage. I offered him some food. He moved slowly, sniffing my hand. He was very gentle. Gentle means soft, kind, and careful. It is the opposite of rough or aggressive. Leo ate the food, and then he did something that melted my heart. He rested his head on my leg. I felt a warm, comforting feeling. Comforting means something that makes you feel less sad or afraid. In that moment, sitting on the cold floor of a shelter, I realized how important small acts of kindness are. I wasn't just feeding a dog, I was connecting with another living being. During a break, I talked with Anna. She told me stories about the other animals. Many had sad pasts, but the shelter gave them a second chance. I felt saddened by their stories. Saddened means to be made unhappy. But I also felt inspired to help. I left the shelter that afternoon feeling pleased. Pleased means happy and satisfied. I had stepped outside of my own problems to help someone else, and that made my own problems feel smaller. Chapter 6. Living with a Stranger. Weeks passed. My savings were getting low. I received a phone call that changed everything again. It was my landlord. A landlord is the person who owns the house you rent. He told me he was selling the building. I had 1 month to move out. This news felt like a massive setback. A setback is a problem that stops your progress. Just when I started to feel better, life knocked me down again. I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by boxes, feeling overwhelmed. Overwhelmed means feeling like you have too much to deal with. Your emotions are too strong to handle. I felt fear, anger, and sadness all at once. I had worked so hard to build a routine, and now it was falling apart. I felt uncertain about the future. Uncertain means not sure. I didn't know where I would live. For a few days I was angry. I stopped going to the animal shelter. I stayed in bed. But then I remembered the old woman's voice. Every problem is also a chance. Maybe losing this apartment was a chance to save money. I started looking for a shared house. A shared house is where you have your own bedroom, but you share the kitchen and living room with other people. It was frustrating looking for a place. Frustrating means annoying and discouraging. Places were too expensive or too dirty. Finally, I found a room. It was small, but affordable. On my first night, I met my housemate, David. A housemate is the person you live with. David was a musician. He played the cello. At first, he seemed distant. Distant means not friendly, keeping away from others. He stayed in his room a lot. But little by little, we started talking in the kitchen while making coffee. He told me about the challenges of being an artist. A challenge is a difficult situation that tests your ability. Living with a stranger was not easy. We argued about cleaning the dishes. We argued about noise. But we learned to compromise. Compromise. This is a very important word in relationships. It means finding a middle ground where both people give up a little bit to agree on a solution. I learned patience. I learned communication. And slowly, David became a friend. One night, I was feeling hopeless. Hopeless means believing that things will never get better. David knocked on my door. He invited me to a small concert at a local cafe. I wanted to say no, to stay in my sadness, but he insisted. To insist means to demand strongly, to not take no for an answer. I went. The music was beautiful. It was soft and emotional. It was very pleasing to hear. Pleasing means enjoyable. That night, listening to the cello, I remembered that joy still existed in the world. Chapter 7. The Teaching Job and the Mistake. I needed money, so I found a part-time job at a language school. Part-time means you work fewer hours than a full week, usually less than 35 hours. I was teaching beginner English. I enjoyed it. I loved watching the students learn. But one day, I made a big mistake. I was stressed and tired. I gave my students the wrong exam paper. It was a test for a much higher level. The students looked at the paper and became confused. They didn't understand the words. Some of them got upset and complained to the manager.
To complain means to tell someone that you were unhappy about something. I felt deeply ashamed. Ashamed means feeling guilty and embarrassed about something you did. I wanted to run away. I thought, I am a failure. I can't even do this simple job. My manager called me into her office. I thought she was going to fire me, but she didn't. She looked at me and said, "Mistakes happen. What matters is how you respond." Respond means how you react or act after something happens. She told me to go back and fix it. So the next day, I stood in front of the class. I apologized. I said, "I am sorry. I made a mistake." I expected them to be angry, but surprisingly, they smiled. They thanked me for being honest. Honest means telling the truth. That day, I learned a huge lesson about responsibility. Responsibility isn't about being perfect. It is about owning your actions and doing the right thing, even when it is hard. Chapter 8. The Big Idea. One afternoon, sitting in a cafe, I had a thought. I realized that many people in my community wanted to learn English but couldn't afford the expensive classes. Community, this refers to the people living in the same area or town. I had an idea. What if I started a free English club? I wrote a proposal. A proposal is a written plan or suggestion that you give to someone for approval. I wrote down my goals. I wanted to create a space where people could learn and feel supported. Supported means helped and encouraged. I showed the plan to my manager. I was nervous, but she smiled. She said, "This is a wonderful idea." Wonderful means excellent or very good. She gave me a classroom to use once a week. I felt relief. Relief is the feeling of relaxation after you have been worried. Chapter 9. The Growth of the Club. The first Saturday, it was raining. Only 4 people showed up, but they were excited. Excited means happy and eager. I taught them simple phrases. I spoke slowly. At first, they were shy. Shy means nervous about speaking to others, but soon they were laughing and practicing. By the end of the class, they were speaking confidently. Confidently means speaking without fear, feeling sure of yourself. I walked home that day feeling a sense of purpose. Week after week, the club grew. More people came. They brought their friends. The atmosphere became collaborative. Collaborative means working together. Students were helping each other study. They formed study groups. It felt like something I had read about in books or perhaps lived through in a course like English Listening Practice Level 3. It felt like a story unfolding where the characters grow together. Soon, the room was overcrowded. Overcrowded means there were too many people for the space. It was hot and noisy. I went to the manager again. This was a challenge, but I wasn't afraid this time. I explained the problem. Because the club was so successful, she agreed to give us a larger room with better equipment. Equipment refers to the tools you need, like a projector, whiteboard, and speakers. I felt grateful. Grateful means full of thanks. Chapter 10. The Exhibition. Then I had a crazy idea. I wanted to organize an exhibition. An exhibition is a public event where you show things to people. I wanted the students to show their families what they had learned. I spent weeks planning. I barely slept. I was overwhelmed again. There were so many details, chairs, microphones, invitations. But on the day of the event, the hall was packed.
There was a feeling of anticipation in the air. Anticipation is the excitement of waiting for something to happen. I walked onto the stage. My hands were trembling again, just like on that first day I lost my job. But this time, it wasn't from fear of loss. It was from the thrill of achievement. I looked at the hundreds of faces. I took a deep breath. I spoke about our journey. I spoke about how language gives people confidence. I spoke slowly and clearly. When I finished, there was silence for 1 second, and then applause. Applause is the sound of people clapping their hands. It was loud. It was long. I saw my students on the side of the stage. They were beaming. They gave speeches, told stories, and acted out scenes. Their families clapped and cheered. In that moment, looking at the joy in the room, I realized something profound. Chapter 11. Reflection. I thought back to the man sitting on the freezing bench in November, the man who felt scattered and isolated. I realized that my friend Julia, who I met in a cooking class, had moved away. When she left, I felt emptied. Emptied means feeling like something is missing inside you. I missed her deeply. But even though she was gone, her kindness stayed with me. I learned that people enter our lives for a reason. They teach us, they change us, and sometimes they leave. But the mark they leave, their influence, stays forever. I wrote a letter to myself that night. I wrote, "You are stronger than you think. You are more capable than you know. You have faced problems, and you are still here." I realized that success isn't the straight line. It isn't fast. It isn't always visible. Visible means able to be seen. Sometimes progress is slow and silent. It happens inside you before it happens outside you. The English Club wasn't just about teaching verbs and nouns. It was about connection. It was about belonging. A sense of belonging is feeling like you are part of a group that accepts you. Conclusion. So, my friends, why did I tell you this long story? Because maybe you are sitting on that cold bench right now. Maybe you feel scattered. Maybe you feel hopeless. I want you to remember that rock bottom can be a foundation. You can build something new. It starts with one small commitment, one small habit, one small act of kindness to a stranger or a dog. Keep trying, no matter how many times you fail. Keep moving forward, even if the road is slow. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you practice your English in a calm and meaningful way. Remember, to learn a language, you must live it through stories and feelings. If this story helped you, or if you felt a connection to my journey, please give this video a thumbs up. It really supports the channel. And don't forget to subscribe to English Glow for more stories that help you learn and grow. Share this with a friend who needs a little hope today. I'm Tom, and until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep believing in yourself. Bye for now.